welcome back to Loki's Librarian. If you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina. On Sundays, I do a thing called Books and Booze, where I review a book and mix up a cocktail. Since it is October, it's time to look at the things that go bump in the night, making this week's book High Priest, Raymond Buckland, the Father of American Witchcraft by Jason Mankey. It is still Sober October, or as I like to call it, week 3 of the hostage situation, making this week's mocktail a pumpkin pie mocktail. What can I say? Mocktail culture has not taken off the way cocktail culture did, and so I basically had to resort to a Google search for fall mocktails. And anyways, a pumpkin pie mocktail is 3 to 4 tablespoons of pumpkin spice syrup, 5 ounces of a non-dairy milk. The creator recommended oat milk, so that's what I went with. A teaspoon of vanilla extract. I pre-garnished my glass with the cinnamon and coconut sugar. It actually says it's an optional lime wedge, but really it's not, because the lime wedge is to get the cinnamon sugar to stick to the glass, so it's not really optional, but you probably could just use water if you didn't want to use lime, just to get the edge of the glass damp. I am not somebody who goes all out for pumpkin spice. I don't eagerly await Starbucks, reintroduction of the pumpkin spice everything. That's just never been me. I enjoy pumpkin pie, but we'll see how this goes. And I also strongly suspect the non-dairy oat is probably because I strongly suspect she's a vegan, the creator of this, because she also recommended Cocoa Whip, which is a non-dairy Cool Whip, basically like a non-dairy whipped cream, if you will. I did not get the Cocoa Whip only because I had a tiny bit of Ready Whip left, and I'm just going to use that up instead of wasting it. Anyways, let's do this. First off, this book is definitely not scary. I know that witches are scary for some. Maybe if Buckland were a Satanist, that might be, but he's not, all right? He was not a Satanist. In fact, he spent a great many years of his life going, no, not a Satanist, that's not me, here's the differences, which is fair, because people are stupid, and they very rarely take the time to learn the nuances of different things. That goes across the board for many people. I'm going to go with the 4 tablespoons, because I need the sugar. Who was Raymond Buckland? Having said he's not a Satanist, let's go into who he was. Raymond Buckland was born August 31st, 1934 in London, England, to Stanley Thomas Buckland and Eileen Lizzie Elizabeth Buckland, maiden name Wells. He was their second-born child. Their firstborn was Gerard Stanley Buckland. The Bucklands, at least on the father's side, were of Romani descent, which is relevant to the story of Ray, because he would later write several books on gypsy magic, gypsy fortune-telling, and what he learned from his grandmother was not just an off-the-cuff claim of legitimacy, all right? He for real had Romani heritage. Author Jason Mankey is a bit, let's say, squeamish about using the word gypsy, which I get. It's very much a slur these days, all right? It's language progresses, that's the beauty of it, and calling somebody a gypsy is a slur. No, so he uses the word gypsy when quoting the title of a work or a direct quote from Buckland, but I totally get it. It's like, if you like rap music, do you say the N-word just because the artist is rapping it? Well, when you are so white you burst into flames in direct sunlight, the answer is no. You just say silent during that part of the song. FYI, the creator of this cocktail was very, very diligent. She does specify there is technically alcohol in this. However, the alcohol amount is so absolutely negligible, you would probably get more drunk opening a bottle of vodka and taking a few deep breaths than you would from putting, using actual vanilla or anything like that in a mocktail. I have to shake this up. So, despite his Romani heritage, Buckland's real introduction to magic would come as an adult. He grew up in England outside of London, largely as a result of the Blitz, right? World War II, the Blitz, Germans were everywhere. They were doing terrible things to the entire planet. Yeah, see, I only had a very little bit of this left. No, dogs, you don't get any whipped cream. After the war, Buckland would become, I think it was an apprentice to an architecture firm, which allowed him to delay his mandatory military service in England. And at the time, they had a draft, and you were required to serve 2 years. He was able to delay it for a time. It was not indefinite, though, and he would eventually serve 2 years in the Royal Air Force before being honorably discharged. Just before serving, he would marry his first wife, Rosemary Moss, in 1955, and they would have 2 children together. Now, after his military service, Ray and Rosemary had to figure out what to do and how to support their young family, and ultimately they would relocate to the United States, where Ray would work for it was a precursor to British Airways. I think it was like British Overseas Airways is what it was called. Let's try this. Meh, does not taste like pumpkin pie. I'm glad I went with the full 4 tablespoons of the pumpkin. It's good, don't get me wrong. Has a decent flavor. I could see where you could foam this up with some coffee and have a latte, or tea and have a latte. I don't even know how you make a latte. It's okay. But, I said week 3 of the hostage situation. And this is what he was doing. He was working for the airline shortly after his move to the United States in the summer of 1962. Ray would stumble across 2 books by Gerald Gardner called Witchcraft Today and The Meaning of Witchcraft. And I believe both are still available as reprints. I know when I was browsing through like thriftbooks.com, the Witchcraft Today, I think it was Witchcraft Today, came up as a possible buy option. I didn't buy it because I'm just not interested, but there it is. You can get it. He was intrigued enough by what he read that he reached out to Gardner by mail. This was 1962. Intercontinental phone calls were prohibitively expensive. Snail mail was not. So they started a correspondence. Now, Gerald Gardner is easily identified as one of the founders of modern witchcraft, a distinction shared largely with Alex Sanders. Proponents of each are referred to as either Gardnerian or Alexandrian. And while I've never been remotely interested in coven work, even I recognized these 2 names when they were introduced in the book. And Buckland's, which is why I bought the book. I saw that. I was like, oh, well, that sounds fascinating. Let's find out about Ray Buckland. Now, Gardner, whose disciples, primary disciples at the time were Monique Wilson and Campbell Scotty Wilson, would shortly pass off the communication with Ray to the Wilsons. And Buckland would eventually be initiated into Gardnerian Wicca. It is Wicca, 1 C. The Americans would have the 2nd C at some point, but it started out with just 1 C. But it's the Wilsons who would actually initiate Ray into Gardnerian tradition. And Ray would then go back home and initiate Rosemary. And I think something like over the course of his life, he would initiate around 60 others into the craft. And that's lifetime. That's not just the 8 years that he ran the New York Coven from 62 to 74. He ran the Coven in New York. The amount he did initiate while in New York was not enough and not fast enough for the Wilsons, especially Monique. She was very on him to more. She wanted this to grow as a religion. But he was taking his time in vetting people. And eventually they would have a falling out, I think largely over this vetting process. She wanted him to be initiating people fast, and he was taking his time, making sure they were genuinely interested, making sure they could keep the secrets of mystery cult. And he learned this because, and he goes over, the author, Jason Mankey, goes over quite a bit of the early drama of, initiates who didn't keep the secrets, broke the silence, if you will, went out and started basically blabbing everything they were learning about the Gardnerian tradition. And so, yeah, he was cautious. He was very cautious. But what would ultimately cause Buckland's total withdrawal from Gardnerian Wicca was his own initiates, Tom and Judy Kneitel, Kneitel, I don't know how to say that, Kneitel, I think. Buckland had actually taken kind of a half step back in 1974. 74? That right? No, it had to have been earlier than that. Had like about 10 years, I guess, he ran the Coven. Anyways, my math isn't mathing today. It's, apparently I think better when I'm drinking too. But anyways, he had taken this half step back from leaving the Coven, partly because his own marriage to Rosemary had fallen apart, that they were divorced, rumors of infidelity on both sides. Who did what to who is totally irrelevant now, 50 years later, 60 years later. They did divorce. And so he took a half step back and handed over the reins to the Neidles, happy to act as an advisor to them. Well, if he had vetted them a little more carefully, he might have realized that, at least in his own opinion, they were power-mad, crazy people. This is what happens when you hand over the reins of power. Drama happens inevitably. And it could literally be the other way. It could be that Ray went crazy watching the changes they were making. He was like, no, we shouldn't do it this way. And regardless, there was a falling out. He stopped practicing Gardnerian entirely, just walked away from it, claiming, quote, more harm has been done to the Gardnerian movement in America by Theos and Phoenix, which are their craft names, than by anyone else, Wiccan, pagan, or Christian. Now, if you want to know more specifics, it's in the book. But largely, I have a feeling it was a difference of opinion. They did go a bit crazy, though. I mean, they would like try and... Mankey hints that part of the split with the Gardnerian Wicca is that Buckland was accepting of the LGBT community, whereas Gardner himself was openly homophobic. Mankey does not say one way or the other if the Neidles were anti-LGBT, although given that Gardnerian is still the largest coven-based system to date, I kind of doubt they were. If they were that unaccepting, I don't think it would still be around. Just given the current political climate and how, it would not still be the thing if the larger Gardnerians would not be the big one still. But you are left with the overall sense that the Nidals simply got too big for their britches, at least in Buckland's opinion. They even tried to invalidate some of Buckland's own initiates after he had already initiated them. Regardless of who said what, when, Mankey assures the reader that all branches of Gardnerian Wicca are offshoots of one big, happy family tree. You can believe as much or as little of that as you wish. Now, after his divorce from Rosemary, Buckland did have a second marriage that lasted a very scant 8 years, from 74 to 82, to Joan Helen Taylor. But it was during his marriage to Taylor that Buckland would write The Tree, Complete Book of Saxon Witchcraft, which introduces a similar to but distinct offshoot of Gardnerian witchcraft, and one that, importantly, allowed for the solitary practitioner. And this one would actually introduce quite a few people to Wicca. His marriage to Taylor was already unraveling when Buckland met his third wife and the love of his life, Tara Buckland. They would be together from 82 until he died. It was after meeting Tara that Buckland went into a period of extreme productivity, starting with what is arguably his most famous work, Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft. I'll throw a picture up here so you know what it looks like. A book that is still in print and available to purchase in basically any occult shop you walk into, any bookstore you walk into. There was a copy at Barnes & Noble the other day. Still widely available. Mankey includes that when he went to Salem, Massachusetts in 2021, cases of this book were available to buy in basically every witch shop he walked into in which city. The Bucklands would move to California, San Diego specifically. They lived there for a while, like 10 years or so, maybe 12, 15. Buckland contributed many more titles to the catalog of witchcraft literature, including all the gypsy books I mentioned. He would get to know producers, and he would appear on TV. Well, he appeared on TV multiple times throughout his life, like from the 60s on, as the expert on witchcraft. Fair enough, he was, by and large, responsible for introducing modern-day witchcraft to the United States. So that's fair. Ultimately, the Bucklands would retire to Ohio, where they would live on a farm until September 27, 2017, when Raymond Buckland would pass away. And it was fairly sudden, too. He'd been having some medical issues. He was I think he was waiting some medical tests, I think in the hospital with Tara. Tara was by his side, and he stood up, and this is actually not a bad way to go. I think most people would say he was awaiting experimental surgery when he passed. Tara describes her final moments with Ray this way. Ray was feeling pretty good otherwise and excited that all his test results would be accessed on his iPad with a special password from the hospital. That was the last thing we talked about. Shortly after that, he got up to go to the bathroom, turned to a nurse who was busy doing something or other, and said, "Oh, hey, I feel a strange fluttering," and then he collapsed. I mean, basically, his time was up, and, God flicked a light switch, man. I mean, what a way to go. No pain, no fear, no doubt, no, oh my God, is this the end? It just gone. It's a way to go, man. There's worse ways to die. Now, obviously, this is a bare bones outline. The book is 300 some pages. Obviously, he provides a lot more detail, and it's all interesting. I genuinely appreciated how Mankey didn't belabor any points he was making. He kept the story moving forward. You can tell he's passionate and excited about his topic. It's something he was very interested in. There's a detailed CV in the back of the book with all of Buckland's works, most of which you can still buy today, either at your local craft store or on like thriftbooks.com or even Amazon. Craft, when I say that, I don't mean like Michael's, I mean like witchcraft stores. We specify here. People going to Michael's and being like, I'm looking for this book, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Overall, it was well organized and concise. Several chapters included thoughts from people who had been impacted by contact with, or rather, Buckland's work. Either or. They could have had direct contact with him, or just be familiar with his work and the impact it had on their own lives, which is a hell of a legacy to leave behind. I mean, no doubt. Everybody wants to be remembered in some way or another, and authors reach that metric more than most anyone else because their thoughts continue to live on after they go. And that's a hell of a thing to leave, man. It's a legacy. I very much liked how each chapter closed with a ceremony or magical practice from something Buckland had written himself, which highlights what an engaging author Buckland was. So, and he even tells you which book he got it from. So if you wanted to go and buy that book and read more from any one topic, that's how you do it. I think the only thing that wasn't was one of the chapters included a star chart from one of the other authors of the Llewellyn catalog. Llewellyn is the publishing company that published the majority of Buckland's works. So that one wasn't from Raymond's work. The only part I found genuinely disingenuous, and this one I rolled my eyes because I was like, seriously, dude. It's just intellectually dishonest when he said this. Mankey says, quote, Ritual tools were often gendered, with people deciding that, for whatever reason, a pointy knife contains male energy and a cup contains female energy. Somewhere in here, Mankey says that he started getting into the craft in the 1990s, and since basically every craft-based book written up until about a decade ago included the same information vis-a-vis ritual tools, he knows good goddamn well why it is that an athame, ceremonial knife for the muggles in the room, is described as masculine. Because it's, phallic shaped. Like, literally, I can't even count the number of books that I've read in the past that said the knife is masculine because it is phallic shaped. The cup is feminine because it's like the receptacle. It's the uterus that accepts the man's seed. And in a highly, what's the word I'm looking for? Symbolic religion, that symbolism is big, right? So knives are masculine, cups are feminine, and the two join, and But, whatever. It's for whatever reason. So it was very disingenuous when he said that. Like, why on earth would a vagina-shaped cup be described as female? I don't know. And it was really, really disingenuous, as he specifically says this after talking about how Wicca, at least early Wicca, was a fertility religion. Awfully hard to be a fertility religion when you're, sterilizing yourself. On the other hand, I am well aware that when your income stream is based on appeasing the rabid masses of an unhinged orthodoxy, you damn well better toe that orthodox line and keep your own opinions to yourself. Unless you're, J.K. Rowling and he reached escape velocity on the financial front. Then you can, be as honest as you like. Fortunately for me, while I don't have that sort of escape velocity, this channel is a hobby, not an income stream. So I'm allowed to call bullshit on the for whatever reason. Other than that, this was a good read. And it explains how modern-day witchcraft jumped the Atlantic Ocean and spread west from New York with the dedication, love, and compassion of the father of modern witchcraft, Raymond Buckland. And that's it for this week. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye.